Now, I just thought I'd show you this just before we do today's video. And look, could you see that? My frozen breath when it comes out. This is the UK now, where we can't afford to put our heating on in winter. We just sit here freezing to death because the elite are now pricing us out of being able to stay warm. 65,000 people, I think it is, die in the UK, or used to die in the UK every year due to the cold in their homes. I wonder how much that figure's going to go up this year and beyond. You know, they tell us that they're all about saving lives. Remember, during the 2 years of lockdown, certificate of vaccine ID and all that kind of thing, and it was about saving lives, save the life of Granny. They don't care about Granny now, do they? No grannies at home, freezing to death, you know, under their blankets, frozen stiff. Yeah, like cardboard, cold to the touch. You know, and this is also happening to younger people also. Children now are suffering because of the lockdowns with all this immunity which has gone by the way and whatever. And now they're all suffering with all kinds of infections. It's not about saving lives, folks. It's about controlling lives. Always remember that. They have got a motive, and it's to control you and keep you in fear. Racism. And here's the Merriam-Webster definition of racism. A belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Okay, Nazism comes to mind, okay, Hitler and his eugenics, etc. And we see that in many other cultures. Also, behaviour or attitudes that reflect and foster this belief, racial discrimination or prejudice. The systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic and political advantage of another. A political or social system founded on racism and designed to execute its principles. So I'll link that below, and you judge for yourselves based on that definition as to what I'm going to speak about now, as to whether that falls in to the definition of racism that we've just read. You be the judge. I've already made my judgment. Now it's your turn. And here we have the BBC News article. I'm sure many of you will already be aware of this, but I just couldn't let this lay down and not say anything about it. Ngozi Fulani, Lady Susan Hussey's race comments were abuse, says charity boss. Now this lady here, Ngozi Fulani, I hope I've pronounced your word correctly. If not, that's okay. You can accuse me of racism. A black British charity boss who was repeatedly asked where she was really from at a royal reception has told the BBC the encounter was abuse. Ngozi Fulani was questioned about her background by Lady Susan Hussey, Prince William's godmother, at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday. The late Queen's lady-in-waiting has since resigned. Miss Fulani likened the conversation with Lady Hussey, 83, to be an interrogation. The palace described the remarks as unacceptable and deeply regrettable. And a spokesperson for Prince William said racism has no place in our society. The incident has overshadowed the Prince and Princess of Wales's visit to the US to hand out awards for his Earthshot Prize. Domestic violence charity Sister Space, when she described Lady Hussey moving her hair to see her name badge and then challenging her repeatedly to explain where she was from. Okay, maybe Lady Hussey should have said, do you mind if you show me your name badge? Okay, yeah, she's invaded someone's space, acceptable, but, you know, sometimes, you know, those things happen when we get all touchy-feely, you know. Miss Fulani was a guest at the reception representing domestic... Speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today programme, Miss Fulani said, it was like an interrogation. I guess the only way I can explain it, she's determined. Where are you from? Where are your people from? Now, I do a job which involves meeting a lot of people, different kinds of people, different ethnicities, different languages spoken. Many times, I have asked whether they're white, whether they're black, whether they're brown, whether they're yellow, whatever colour skin they are. If, to me, I ask somebody, which I've done many times, I've said to them, okay, well, you know, where are you from? And they might say London or wherever from, Cardiff or something like this, or somewhere in Scotland or Ireland. I ask them and I say, well, where are you from? They'll tell me, and I'll say to them, yeah, but where are you? Say they are black, and I've done it. I say, yeah, but where? And they might, I even have an accent. I said, but what, you know, what's your ancestry? And they told me, and that's fine. You know, they didn't start screaming racism or that's abuse. You know, that's me asking them. You know, many Eastern Europeans, when I speak to them, I say, oh, where are you from? Poland, wherever, Slovakia or Romania, and then we have a chat about where they're from and showing interest. That's all that is showing interest. You know what really bugs me about this is, you know, the very fact that someone has asked somebody about their ancestral roots demonstrates that what's racist about that? It's genuine interest. Now, it could have been turned around, couldn't it? Oh, she didn't ask me about my African roots, my ancestral roots, or my Slovakian roots, blah, blah, blah. That's racist. She's just ignored my heritage, my African heritage. You know, these people are out there and they are hell-bent on pulling this country apart at any opportunity. And it is an absolute disgrace. They should be ashamed of themselves. Absolutely ashamed of themselves. Ms. Fulani also rebuffed suggestions that lady whose these remarks had anything to do with her age. Okay, well, we'll just skip that bit there and go on. She said, although it's not physical violence, it's an abuse. Ms. Fulani continued, if you invite people to an event against domestic abuse and there are people there from different demographics, I don't see the relevance of whether I'm British or not British. There was no relevance. She was just asking you a question. Dear me. I'm very proud of my African heritage. There it is. There it is, folks. But it's okay for her to talk about her African heritage, but how dare anybody else ask about it? Yes, how dare you bring up my African heritage? But I'm very proud of it. It's a huge contradiction. This is like the Windrush thing to me. You're trying to make me unwelcome in my own space. Oh dear. What, your little safe space where you don't want anyone to encroach, but it's okay for you to talk about your African heritage. But if anybody asks you about it out of a genuine interest, then they're invading your space. Get a life and get a grip. You know what? There's things called Ancestry.com where they check your DNA to see where you're from. I've done one. And I've checked my Y chromosome. And I found out, you know, I'm from like the Middle East somewhere in my ancient past ancestors. You know, from the line of Shem. And what really bugs me now is, and does this mean that all these Ancestry.coms where they check your DNA and check where you're from and your Y chromosome, does this mean that they're racist now? Can we accuse them of being racists? Because we're asking questions about our ancient ancestors and our ancestral past. Look, we're all immigrants. We've all originated from around Mesopotamia, Middle Eastern area, that part of the world, and we spread out around the world. Okay? There's nothing wrong with asking people what their ancestral heritage is. And especially when that person who's screaming racist suddenly turns around and says, I'm very proud of my African heritage. Dear. It's just insane. She added she felt like she was being asked to denounce my British. Oh my goodness me. Absolute insanity. Rishi Sunak said the UK must continually learn the lessons from the acts of race. That's not racism to ask somebody what their ancestral heritage is. Get a life. The Prime Minister said it wouldn't be right for him to comment on the incident at the palace, adding, "They've acknowledged what's happened and made an apology for it." Asked about his own experiences, Mr Sunak said that while he had experienced racism, the country had made incredible progress. You know what really gets me? Why is it the newspapers can refer to people's ancestral heritage? For instance, Rishi Sunak, as far as there was articles in the papers the other day and online talking about his ancestry. So are they racist? Are they racist for mentioning his heritage? No, but that's just skipped over, isn't it? Yeah, it's okay for them to say, oh, the first black this, or the first black brown that, or the first yellow this. Oh, right, okay. That's okay for them to make reference to, isn't it? But when someone asks about someone's ancestral heritage, boom, not allowed. We're going to have a go at you. And it's all been a setup, hasn't it? Yeah, and we think we know who this lady's connected to. But I'm not going to go into that because I've not really looked into that yet. But anyway, but the job is never done, he added. And that's why we see it. But the job is never done, he added, and that's why whenever we see it, we must confront it, and it's right that we continue to learn the lessons and move to a better future. Lady Hussey was a key figure, and it goes on about so on and so on. Now, you know, an eyewitness to the conversation, leader of the Women's Equality Party. Oh dear, 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 dear. Yeah, feminism. Extreme feminism. Mandy Reid. Oh, I'm anti-women now. Oh dear, I'm anti-women. Oh dear. Mandy Reid told BBC News that Lady Hussey's questions had been offensive, racist and unwelcome. Can you explain why the racist, instead of just spouting off? Nazir Afzal, former chief prosecutor of the Crown Prosecution Service, who also was at the reception, said Lady Hussey also asked him about his heritage once and seemed to accept my answer, Manchester currently. And in the next breath, I'm proud of my African ancestry. That's what it's all about, folks. They can spout out their African ancestry, but when we show an interest, a genuine interest to ask them, just in case they want to label us as racist because we didn't ask them, then suddenly they can scream racist, etc., etc. No-win situation. The now Chancellor of the University of Manchester added, racism is never far away. Oh dear, dear, dear. You know, I'm not going to go on any more about it. It's all there. You know, it's ridiculous. Absolute insanity. You know, they think it's only them who have suffered racism, etc., etc. Well, now here we have a book, okay, called White Gold by Giles Milton. And in this book, it records from the 18th century a gentleman who was enslaved in North Africa. In the summer of 1716, a Cornish cabin boy named Thomas Pellow and 51 of his comrades were captured at sea by Barbary corsairs. Their captors, Captain Ali Hakem and his network of fanatical Islamic slave traders, had declared war on the whole of Christendom. Poked, prodded and put through their paces at the great slave markets of Morocco, thousands of Europeans were sold to the highest bidder. Thomas Pellow was bought by the tyrannical Sultan Moulay Ismail as a personal slave, and he would witness firsthand the barbaric splendour of the imperial Moroccan court, as well as experience daily terror for 23 years. He was one of the fortunate few who survived to tell this tale. Now, we read on the front of it also here, okay, great book by the way, The Extraordinary Story of Thomas Pellow and North Africa's 1 million European slaves. I'll say that again, 1 million European slaves. So it's not only black people, persons who have been enslaved, whites, 1 million of them, enslaved in North Africa. Okay? So you're not alone. Slavery is here. It's still here. No matter whatever colour of skin you are, stop playing the victim card. You need to grow up and grow up fast. In the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 26. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him, yet he is actually not far from every one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said. So here, I'll just read it again for you. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. Yes, the book of Acts, God's written word, telling us there's only one race. There aren't multiple races. There's one race. There's different ethnic groups. There's different people groups, but there's one race. Racism is a lie from the pit. There is no such thing as racism. It's created to oppress you and keep you under the thumb of those who want to control you.